Hello and welcome back to the Retirement Cafe podcast. With summer well and truly upon us and holidays planned, I'm hoping to have more time off and, of course, to enjoy one of my passions, reading. In fact, as this episode is released, I hope to be sat by the pool in Greece doing just that, reading. Today, I would like to share with you some of my hand-picked recommendations, things I'm hopefully going to be enjoying over the summer. So I'll be chatting to Kathy about why I've chosen these books. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hello.
Hi.
So maybe we could start, Justin, you could just start by explaining about your love of reading. I mean, you're an avid reader, aren't you? You don't seem to be able to get enough books. So where does that come from?
Restricted amount of television, I think, as a child. So of the youngest of four, two elder brothers and an elder sister. And those were the days when there was only a couple of channels on the TV, and mum and dad weren't keen on us sitting in front of the TV for a long periods of time. There was plenty of books in the house, but I loved to read, and my sister kindly gave me her library card so I could get out more than the 4 eligible books a week that I was allowed from the local library, so I could get 8 books out a week. And that was always my passion, that and getting outside. So that's where it's come from, and it's stuck with me.
It stayed with you. So you probably have some memorable books from your childhood if you read so much that have perhaps had a big impact on you. Can you recall any?
Well, yeah. I mean, I really did. When we were reading to our girls, I really did actually remember some of the stuff that I read of my sister's books, Mallory Towers and things like that. When I'd run out of Biggles, at W.E. Johns, I'd run out of fighter pilot stories and World War II heroes, etc., that type of thing. I've mentioned before, I think, Douglas Bader, Reach for the Sky, a book written by Paul Brickhill, was just amazing about this RAF pilot, fighter pilot in World War II, who had lost his legs in an aerobatics accident and got back into the Air Force with tin legs and became a World War II fighter ace. I read that book maybe 4 or 5 times.
Brilliant. And so, what do books mean to you? Do they have some kind of deeper meaning? Do they represent something else?
I think it's just mostly, I'm not reading novels. I rarely read novels, which I think is probably a shame. I read a lot of novels when I was a child. But nowadays, I'm just really interested in the insights of others and of their stories, of their lives, I suppose. So, that's where it really comes from. I'm just fascinated by people's journeys.
And a continual passion for learning, I think it's fair to say. Throw that one in. I know, we see the Amazon and other deliveries coming to the office day in, day out. You buy a lot of books, don't you? And that's just the physical books that we see. But do you always read physical books, or do you also use, read Audible or listen to Audible, read ebooks?
Yeah, do all of those, as you know. So I like Kindle, but it depends on the book, I think, whether I feel that I need to make notes in the margin or put Post-it notes and refer to something. So if it's a technical book, I often will buy the physical copy so I can actually just make notes and really thick. I prefer a physical book, but there are circumstances where the Kindle is released earlier or it's just easier. And it's just the right thing to do. So I use that. I use Kindle. I use another service called Scribed, which I find really good as well. And Audible, yeah. Scribed has Audible as well, or ebook, you listen to books. But audible.com, I listen to a lot of stuff when kind of going to the gym or walking the dog. I really quite enjoy that.
And do you ever drop a book? Do you ever start a book and think, oh, this isn't what I hoped it would be? You do, okay. What kind of proportion do you think of the books that you buy to
quite
read?
a lot, I suppose. I think I just dip in, and then quite soon I go, no, it's not getting. I'm not. Or there is. I mean, obviously, if it's a technical book, I just often go to it's about tax or something. I just go to the specific thing that is I finding complex at the moment, so that I can get the right answer quite quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So reference books more so. Yeah.
But often other stuff as well, you just kind of get into it and you go, there are a lot of books, sadly, which take, what could have been written in an essay.
Yes.
They then stretch out to be a book, and that's slightly frustrating, I suppose.
Yeah, you get bored quickly, don't you? You move on.
Well, yeah, and of course I'm going to come on to this a little bit later, but AI is allowing me to quickly summarize books, give me a summary of it. And I'll often do that now, even before I've bought it, to go, okay, so what are the key concepts here? What are they trying to get across?
Interesting. The future of books. Okay, so let's get into the books you've chosen to recommend for summer reading. What's the first one?
So quite a lot of these I haven't actually read yet. So, but I want to tell you I bought them and I'm hoping to read them. And this is going to be actually what I'm going to be consuming over the summer. The first one, which I've really come across recently, and it's 98 pence on Kindle. So, wow, I mean, this is an absolute bargain. This is called How They Succeeded, Life Stories of Successful Men Told by Themselves. It was published in 1901, and it's a classic self-help book on the subject of succeeding with a particular focus on business and money matters. And it's the first-hand look into the lives of many successful late 19th century entrepreneurs. So Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Rockefeller, Carnegie, the names that a lot of people, Theodore Thomas, lots of people, lots of names that, titans of industry, academia, literature, they were all interviewed, and it was all about aiming at understanding the person behind, the great person and what their story was. And what counsel these men and women would offer to younger people just starting out in their careers. Interesting.
Are there any women in the book being written in 1901?
There's Amelia Barr. I don't know much about her. There's Mary Proctor. Mostly males, but there definitely are some women in there as well. There are some names I don't recognise, so I'm really looking forward to. Often enough you'll go, oh my gosh, did they do that? I didn't know who was behind that story.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a history book as well as hopefully inspirational.
And so, what is it you're hoping to get from reading this book?
Well, just that kind of history aspect of, I know a bit about Dale Carnegie and the Carnegie Foundation. Where were we? I've got a feeling we were in the northeast of the country. Anyway, I digress. But, the Carnegie Building in the UK, great industrialists, great American industrialists. So, just understanding about their insights. And as I say, for 98 pence, I couldn't resist.
It's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? Okay. And is that one, have you bought that as a physical book?
No, Kindle. Yeah, it's quite expensive. It's actually quite expensive not expensive, but, it's much more expensive on the physical book. And it was like, well, for 98 pence, I'll just get that. And, dip in, and you haven't really spent, and obviously we're going on holiday, so I don't want to take too many physical books, because I know I've occasionally had some criticism aimed at me by the rest of the family of, like, you've just got a pile of books and a pair of shorts,
Fantastic. And it is sounds like the kind of book that you can dip into, can't you? You can read about one of the characters, or you can read about, another, and whichever one's appeal. And I guess, presumably there's been a few editions since 1901. This isn't the original publication.
No, this is the original publication.
It's the original?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's printed or created by lostbooks.com or something like that. They're the publishers now. So, so
that's interesting in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, they'll be written in the style of the author of the 1900s, so.
Great. Good stuff. Okay, so that's number one. And remind me of the title again.
That one is called, How They Succeeded, Life Stories of Successful Men Told by Themselves.
Brilliant. So obviously we'll put links in the show notes to all of these where you can get hold of all of these books.
Yeah. We'll do Amazon links so that you can make me filthy rich on the commissions that Amazon will pay on a 98 pence Kindle book. But yes,
absolutely. I'm sure that's all of 0.2 pence. Right. Okay. So what's your second book?
Another self-help. Yeah. The Path of Least Resistance, Learning to Become the Creative Force in Your Own Life. It's by Robert Fritz. Again, it's a self-help book, but it delves into the psychology of creating and the mechanics of personal change. Now, I find this fascinating. We do this life planning work, helping people, dream what they want to really achieve, what's really within their hearts. And I'm just always fascinated about other people's perspectives of how they can help people get to that point of, what is truly important to you, and then the strategies to come into play. And it's been recommended to me, and it looks, again, absolutely fascinating. Great reviews.
There are a lot of books in this kind of genre, aren't they? There's a real, I think if you probably typed in self-help, but become more creative type of thing, you'd probably come up with dozens and dozens of books. What made this one stand out? Again,
first of all, it's recommendation from, I'm a member of this group called The Lattice Work. It's kind of a mastermind group of people who are really interested in mental models. I've talked about that before, about great decision making. It's a group of us. We have a WhatsApp group, and we talk about stuff, about how what's going on in the world. And there are a lot brighter minds on this group than me. I stand on the shoulders of giants, and when someone makes a book recommendation, I take notice.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so recap the title again.
So that's called The Path of Least Resistance by Robert Fritz.
Right.
And it's about the principle that, like energy, human behavior tends to follow the path of least resistance. And it struck a bell with me, because I often talk about letting water run downhill, which of course is actually what water does anyway, naturally, but that natural flow of life, in essence, or just trying to make whatever it is that you're trying to do, try to make it as easy as possible, because with the less friction you've got, the easier it comes to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So, water running downhill, of course, you just think, well, it does that naturally. But of course, it comes across boulders, and it comes across kind of, the river meanders, doesn't it, trying to get down to the sea. And I just feel that's a great metaphor for life. It's actually that, whatever we're trying to achieve, if our destination is the sea, and how do we actually make it as easy as possible so that we can flow as well as possible to get to where we want to get to? Because if we're just met with resistance all the time, that's a tough place to be. So that's the kind of one of the topics within there, and I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. Let's understand more about this.
Great. And is that a physical book you've bought, or?
I've got a feeling it's on Audible. Yeah, Audible.
Okay, you're going to be listening to that.
Yeah, I'm going to be listening to that.
Okay, good stuff. Do you have a third recommendation for us?
Yeah, so this is getting to the money side of things now. This is another recommendation from my Lattice Work group of friends. This is called A Man for All Markets. It's written by a guy called Edward Thorpe. Is a renowned mathematician and investor. He shares his life story from his early days as a mathematics professor to his groundbreaking work in the world of finance. He's recognized for his contributions to the field of quantitative finance and his pioneering efforts in applying mathematical and statistical principles to beat the odds in gambling and investing. So he's famous for developing strategies in blackjack and later applying his analytical skills to the financial markets. And he recounts his journey and offers insights into his methods and strategies. That fascinates me. Again, I'm a very much of a believer that it's pretty difficult to beat the markets. So, you know, of the school of kind of, you know, get invested, stay invested, be diversified, etc. So I'm really fascinated by anyone who's got a different story to say and to give me a different insight, a different perspective.
Are you hoping to pick up a few tips for the blackjack table?
Yeah, maybe. No. I don't think I'll. I think I'll stay away from the blackjack table. Really. Yeah, it's not my place.
It's interesting though, isn't it? When people come at investing from a different background, you know, they apply these different skills and knowledge and experience, and you know, have a different take probably on that. That sounds like it's not such a dry book.
No,
possibly. No. If you're bringing that angle to it as well.
Yeah.
And is this one of those that you've bought and you'll make some notes in the margin?
Definitely. Physical book for this one.
Is this book by somebody that you've read previous books by? I mean, an author that you're familiar with?
I think it's actually about Thorpe who wrote it himself.
Right.
So, you know, it's a biography, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah.
Or about his philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think these are all new authors, aren't they? The books you're talking about. You've talked about so far. They're not people you've read any work from before.
No.
Okay. Anything else you want to share? Right.
Yes. So next, I definitely, and I'm sure you have been consuming Andrew Huberman, Dr. Andrew Huberman. He has a podcast.
Huberman Lab.
Yeah, the Huberman Lab, which I've been following now for the last couple of years, and I find him absolutely fascinating. He's a neuroscientist in the States. He's professor at the Department of Neurobiology at Stanford University School of Medicine, expert in neuroplasticity, and I highly recommend that you hook into his podcast. This is actually a video that you can watch on YouTube called "How to Change Your Brain." It's on the Rich Roll podcast, who's a sports person, and it's a 2-hour watch.
Wow.
But it's everything. Huberman talks about neuroplasticity, the state of flow in the dopamine system, studying fear, courage, resilience, how to deal with problems of motivation and focus, deep rest, optic flow, EMDR. So EMDR is something I'm quite fascinated through as a therapy. So again, when I can find 2 hours to listen to these two guys talk, I think that will be absolutely fascinating. And it probably will be something I just listen to rather than actually watch. But just I can imagine just hooking in and listening to this conversation again. It will be quite fascinating.
That's perhaps a good one to download and listen to on the plane, because, you know, you can have a little nod, can't you? You can nod off a little halfway through. And
I am fortunate enough because I am a YouTube paid subscriber. I'm allowed to download YouTube videos. So, that's pretty useful for when you're on the plane and don't have internet access.
Yes, absolutely. And isn't Rich Roll, hasn't he got the most listened to or downloaded podcast ever? I mean,
I don't know about that. The Rich Roll podcast is huge, but I'm going to come on to another one a little bit later, which might even be bigger than the Rich Roll podcast. But anyway, I'm not sure. I haven't seen that. I haven't worked out who's bigger. That wasn't important enough for me to discover.
Great. No, but I think his podcasts are long, aren't they? You know, his episodes are long.
Yes.
Episodes. They're in depth. They can be, I think Huberman Lab, they can get quite technical, can't they? Very scientific.
Yes. Well, a bit like this one. It's not going to be technical, but it's getting long. So
Yes. Excellent. Okay. On that note, let's move on to the next. Anything else you want to share? Obviously, you've got another podcast to share.
I have. So I came across, again on my little group there, I came across a guy called Walter Isaacson who'd done an interview with Elon Musk, which was absolutely, I've listened to some of it and absolutely fascinating. I'm like, well, this guy's really interesting, Walter Isaacson. And it turns out that he's written a ton of books. and well-renowned, basically biographies. So he's written one on Steve Jobs. Again, Steve Jobs of Apple fame, drawn for 3 years of exclusive and unprecedented interviews with Jobs and Jobs' family and key colleagues from Apple. It's a biography of Steve Jobs, and I'm fascinated by people like Steve Jobs. Kind of like, how did your creative brain achieve what you did in the lifetime that you had? So that's a download on Audible. Then, of course, classically, I went, oh, look, he's done one on Leonardo da Vinci as well. Again, Walter Isaacson, again, highly renowned. It's based on thousands of pages from Leonardo's astonishing notebooks and about his life and work. Again, look, it's about observing the genius of the man, the painter, the scientist. So again, I'm thinking that could be quite fascinating to listen to.
And what do you find fascinating about that?
Well, I mean, the guy had such an amazing creativity, I suppose. It's again, Steve Jobs is possibly the same. And I don't know as yet. I'm just absolutely curious about people's minds like that. This can flip from the arts to science in a whisker. That's my perception. Whether that's the truth, I'll obviously be more informed once I've listened to the book.
Fantastic. So, any final recommendations to wrap up with?
Oh, by the way, sorry. Yes, the other thing, just on the Leonardo one, just at the end, something in the bio of the book, about what you're going to get. Him being at ease at being a misfit, illegitimate, gay, vegetarian, left-handed, easily distracted, and at sometimes heretical, I think it is. His life should remind us of the importance of instilling both in ourselves and our children, not just receive knowledge, but a willingness to question it, to be imaginative, and to like talented misfits and rebels in any area, to think differently.
I think that kind of sums you up, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know, but probably not actually. I mean, this is people who really are pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yes. I'm probably far
but
far
the
too
curiosity,
conformist.
the curiosity aspect of it, I think I see that why that resonates with you.
And something, of course, we tell our girls, and now as adults, we realise that the children who were a little bit different at school are now actually the interesting adults. The ones who were the misfits, the ones who weren't quite in with the cool crowd, are the ones who actually often move on into life to be, really quite make a real impact in a different way. And I find that fascinating.
Absolutely. So that's the Leonardo da Vinci one. Any further recommendations?
Yes. Well, I keep being asked a lot because the British public's love of property in the UK. And, as advisors, we come across people who've invested in property over a long time. I'm a fan of something called the Schmidt tax reports, which I get on a monthly basis and have done for a long time. The author of that is a guy called Alan Pink. And he's written a book called Practical Tax Planning for Property, Jargon-Free Advice for Investors and Developers. It's a practical guide to how to, in essence, pay less tax if you're a property investor. Minimize your income tax on rents, structure the property tax efficiently, reduce your capital gains tax, reduce stamp duties. There's a lot in it. And a lot of our clients have got a property, property portfolio. They have some buy-to-lets, or they haven't sold property in the past. They've inherited. So, I need to keep up to date with the different ways that you can structure a property portfolio tax efficiently. So, yes, I think it's a bit of learning for me, and I'm always interested in this type of stuff myself because, of course, this insight can bring great value to to our clients.
Absolutely. Is this something you'd recommend others read? Or
Yeah, definitely. If you're a property investor, why not? Why wouldn't you? You know, the guy's well renowned. He knows what he's talking about. Alan Pink, Practical Tax Planning for Property. He aims it. It's called Jargon-Free Advice for Investors and Developers.
Great. Brilliant. Okay. Any final recommendations?
Yes, another one which I am enjoying at the moment and partway through, but I've got a feeling it's something like 11 hours. So we'll see how I get on with this. The Essays of Warren Buffett. I'm a great fan of Warren Buffett. I've talked about him before. He writes a regular letter to shareholders once a year and has an annual kind of conference. This book is called The Essays of Warren Buffett, Lessons for Corporate America, a modern classic. It looks at, what Buffett likes about investing and just wisdom, basically, his thoughts, invaluable information, I think, again, for any investors. So, yes, I've already, on Audible, you have an ability to make clips, make bookmarks, in essence. When you like a little bit, you can go back the 15 seconds and make a bookmark on that, and then I can go back afterwards and re-listen to that or put that into my Readwise app, and it gets resurfaced for me later on so I can remember some of this stuff that I'm reading.
Excellent. And, with all of these books that you're planning to read over the next few weeks, do you actually find that you retain all this knowledge and insight and actually go back and use it, like with the Warren Buffett, essays, the Essays of Warren Buffett? Do you actually, how do you make sure you can make that happen? Like you say, you use the Readwise app to save your insights.
I think, the Buffett stuff, or Warren Buffett's thoughts, which he pens so beautifully, are really about often explaining quite difficult concepts. So for argument's sake, Buffett talks about hamburgers, right? So he likes a hamburger. He likes a Coke as well. Okay, so he's doing quite well on it. But he talks about hamburgers.
He's a pretty big investor in Coke, isn't he?
He is, yes. But he talks about hamburgers, and he said, and for argument's sake, if the price of hamburgers was continually to go up at 10% a year, they continually get more expensive. And, if you liked a hamburger, you'd be, quite annoyed at that fact that it continued to rise above inflation over the course of your buying life of hamburgers, because you definitely wanted one a week, then they continually went up in price. You'd be upset by that. And then he equates that to stocks. And he says, so if you're buying stocks or shares, as we call them in the UK, if you're buying shares in the UK or across the world and the share price continually goes up, for some strange reason, you're pleased because you see the value of your portfolio going up and you keep putting money in, you keep putting your monthly pension contributions in, etc., into that retirement savings plan. And you're happy that the price is rising. Well, why is that? Really, what you want is the price to fall. You want the price to continually fall over the course of your lifetime investing, and you want it to go up when you start need to drawing down on it. But you don't need to go up as you keep buying it. And he just points it out at these kind of really easy to understand kind of ways that that you're upset at buying higher prices on your hamburgers, but you're not upset about paying higher prices on your stocks.
Interesting way of looking at it.
It is, and I love this because, of course, I can use these types of analogies in my conversations with clients to try and explain what's really going on. That actually, over the course of your lifetime, you don't want, even though it's very nice to log into your portfolio and see it's gone up by 10%, unless you're drawing down on it. Actually, you want to be buying when the prices are low and selling when your prices are expensive. And the prices will be generally, always have historically been, more expensive 10, 15, 20 years out, which is why you need to be a long-term investor. So he has some great analogies about why corporate investors or investors in the US, and I think it works straight as well for the UK investor, how we're psychologically flawed in how we trade the markets.
Great. I'm sure you'll share some more stories from Warren Buffett's essays over the summer. Anything else you want to share with us?
A podcast. A really, really big podcast in the UK, which is called The Diary of the CEO. And many of our listeners, I'm sure, will have already heard this, but this is a guy called Stephen Bartlett. He's an entrepreneur, he's a speaker, he's an investor, author, and the number one UK podcast is A Diary of the CEO. You know, I think it's just outstripping the Retirement Cafe podcast. By millions a week. But, you know, he's got one episode that I'm going to provide a link to, which is with the Egyptian entrepreneur and writer Mo Gawdat. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And this podcast is important because he's ex-Google and has been part of the artificial intelligence revolution. And he has a really, really candid conversation with Stephen Bartlett about AI and what his why he's terrified of the future. I think it's really fascinating and it's well worth a listen. If this is all passing you by a little bit and you're not really sure what AI is and how it's going to affect the future, I can really, really suggest you listen to it and hopefully don't become too terrified.
Yes, hopefully there's a balanced conclusion at the end of the podcast. Have you listened to it all the way through as yet?
I have. Yeah.
Okay. Clearly it doesn't have a balanced conclusion at the end. You leave feeling terrified, do you?
Well, you know, it's significant change. And as with all significant change, human beings are frightened of it. You know, we try and maintain a kind of status quo. But the reality is, you know, we're hurtling through the universe and the life continually changes. And this is another massive, massive change. I do liken it to the internet revolution. You know, we're old enough to know a life before Google and the internet. You know, what significant change the internet has been to our lives. And I think AI is going to be massive, significantly change, and therefore you've got to harness it and you've got to understand it and you've got to realize what is it that you can be used for and what good it could be used for. But yeah, human beings are flawed individuals and we've all got different agendas. So that's the scary stuff, is that actually, do we know what the agendas of some people will be with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's not all rosy, is it?
No.
Fantastic. Okay. Anything else you want to share with us?
No, I think that's probably cover a couple of summers.
Probably cover a couple of weeks for you.
And hopefully I will actually have some conversation with you and my family this summer holiday. maybe a little. Well, with how early you get up, you get a good couple of hours in reading, don't you, before, you know, anyone else surfaces. So you'll be fine. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you for that. No problem.
Well, again, you know, thanks everyone out there. Hopefully you have a wonderful summer. Thanks again for listening to my recommendations. Oh, as I say, as Kathy and I said, we'll put all those links in the show notes. And let me know what you think, whether you enjoy some of those episodes, some of those books, whether you prefer Audible, whether you prefer Kindle or the physical book, obviously. And if there's something that I've missed or should listen to or read, please send out a recommendation to me. You can find me at hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk. Of course, if you've enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find us. And for more interviews and retirement planning videos, you might want to check out my YouTube channel. Just search for Justin_King. Of course, we can put a link in the show notes for you as well. So until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.